There is a biological phenomenon that most men over 60 notice has quietly disappeared, and almost none of them discuss with their doctor. Nocturnal penile tumescence, the spontaneous erections that occur during REM sleep and upon waking, is not simply a sexual function. It is a diagnostic window into the health of the vascular system, the hormonal axis, and the nervous system simultaneously. The new senior food pyramid identifies the two minerals most men in this age group are deficient in, and whose absence directly shuts down this biological signal. This video is for educational purposes only. Sexual and hormonal health are complex and multifactorial. The information presented is based on published endocrinology and nutrition research and the 2026 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. Consult your healthcare provider for a complete hormonal evaluation before making significant dietary changes. This is a subject most men do not bring up, but it matters more than most realize. Share this video discreetly with the men in your life who might benefit. And tell us in the comments, without needing to share personal details. Did you know that morning erections were a health indicator? In healthy men, nocturnal penile tumescence occurs 3 to 5 times per night, typically during REM sleep phases. Each episode requires the coordinated function of 4 distinct physiological systems: adequate circulating testosterone, functional endothelial nitric oxide production, normal parasympathetic nerve activity, and unobstructed arterial blood flow to the pelvic region. When these events stop occurring or become infrequent, it is not a trivial cosmetic change. It is an early warning sign that one or more of these systems is underperforming. Cardiologists have begun recognizing reduced morning erections as an early indicator of cardiovascular disease, often appearing years before symptoms like chest pain or elevated blood pressure reach diagnostic thresholds. Endocrinologists recognize them as a primary indicator of androgen deficiency. What is almost never discussed is the nutritional dimension of this decline, specifically the role of two minerals, whose deficiency alone can produce the full picture of reduced morning vitality in men over 60. The first mineral is zinc. Its relationship to testosterone production is direct and well established. Testosterone is synthesized in the Leydig cells of the testes through a multi-step enzymatic pathway, and zinc is a required cofactor for the final enzyme in that pathway, 17-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase. Without adequate zinc, this enzyme operates at reduced capacity, and testosterone production falls. But zinc's influence on the hormonal system does not stop there. The hypothalamic-pituitary-gonadal axis, the signaling cascade that initiates and regulates testosterone production from the brain downward, also requires zinc at multiple steps. Zinc acts at the hypothalamic level to regulate the pulsatile release of gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which in turn stimulates the pituitary to release LH, which signals the Leydig cells to produce testosterone. A zinc-deficient man, therefore, has simultaneously impaired testosterone production at the testicular level and impaired signaling at the brain level. This double hit on the hormonal axis produces testosterone deficiencies that are often misdiagnosed as age-related hypogonadism, when they are actually correctable nutritional insufficiency. Zinc also plays a direct role in vascular function through its influence on nitric oxide synthase, the enzyme responsible for producing nitric oxide in the endothelial cells lining blood vessels. Nitric oxide is the signaling molecule that causes smooth muscle in blood vessel walls to relax, allowing arterial dilation and increased blood flow. The mechanism of erection is fundamentally a nitric oxide-mediated vascular event. Penile arteries dilate, blood flows in under pressure, and the corpora cavernosa fill and compress the venous drainage, sustaining the erection. A man deficient in zinc has impaired nitric oxide production in the very vascular tissue that this mechanism depends on. He is functionally in a state of endothelial dysfunction, affecting exactly the vessels that matter most for this purpose. The food sources of zinc with the highest bioavailability are oysters, by a considerable margin, followed by red meat, particularly beef and lamb, then dark poultry meat, crab, and lobster. Plant sources of zinc, including pumpkin seeds, legumes, and whole grains, contain meaningful zinc but in a form bound to phytic acid, which reduces absorption significantly. For men over 60 whose zinc status is already marginal due to age-related reductions in gastrointestinal absorption, relying primarily on plant zinc sources will not reliably restore zinc adequacy. The 2026 Dietary Guidelines rehabilitation of red meat and shellfish as nutritionally valuable foods for older adults is directly relevant here. Oysters are the single most zinc-dense food available, providing more than 5 times the daily requirement in a single 100-gram serving. The second mineral is magnesium, and its mechanism of action on male hormonal health is distinct and operates primarily through sex hormone-binding globulin, commonly called SHBG. SHBG is a protein produced by the liver that binds testosterone molecules in the bloodstream and renders them biologically inactive. Only testosterone that is not bound to SHBG, the fraction called free testosterone, can enter cells, bind to androgen receptors, and exert its biological effects on muscle, bone, brain, and vascular tissue. SHBG levels increase with age, progressively reducing the proportion of testosterone that is bioavailable even when total testosterone levels appear normal on standard blood tests. This is why many men with total testosterone in the normal range still experience all the symptoms of testosterone deficiency: low energy, reduced muscle mass, cognitive blunting, and diminished morning vitality. Their total testosterone is adequate, but their free testosterone is low because SHBG is binding most of it. Magnesium inhibits SHBG production. This is the mechanism through which adequate magnesium status directly increases biologically available testosterone without requiring any change in testosterone production. Multiple studies in men over 65 have shown that correcting magnesium insufficiency, whether through supplementation or increased dietary intake, produces measurable increases in free testosterone within 4 to 8 weeks. Magnesium also reduces the conversion of testosterone to estrogen by the aromatase enzyme, a process that is accelerated in adipose tissue and that contributes to the feminization of the hormonal profile that some men experience as they age and accumulate abdominal fat. Eduardo was 68 and mentioned almost in passing to his integrative physician that he had not experienced morning erections in roughly 2 years. He attributed it to age and had not sought any evaluation. His blood work showed total testosterone in the low normal range and free testosterone below the reference range. Serum zinc was at 68 micrograms per deciliter, borderline low. Magnesium was insufficient at 0.72 μmol/L. His physician recommended increasing dietary zinc through red meat 3 times per week and oysters when available, adding daily pumpkin seeds and almonds for magnesium, and including dark leafy greens. He made no other changes. After 4 months, Eduardo's free testosterone had increased by 22.2%. Morning erections had returned with a frequency he described as normal. His general energy and motivation had improved substantially. His physician noted that his grip strength had also increased, a proxy for systemic testosterone activity in skeletal muscle. If this video is giving you a new perspective on something your doctor has probably never raised, write in the comments, "My vitality is worth fighting for." Leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this series on hormonal health and real food. The interaction between zinc, magnesium, and testosterone does not operate in isolation. It is embedded in a larger nutritional context that the 2026 guidelines address directly. Saturated fat from animal sources is required for testosterone synthesis because testosterone is a steroid hormone, meaning its molecular backbone is derived from cholesterol. The previous low-fat dietary guidelines, by systematically encouraging the replacement of animal fats with polyunsaturated vegetable oils, created a dietary environment that reduced the cholesterol substrate available for steroid hormone synthesis. Studies comparing men on high-fat diets with men on low-fat diets consistently show higher testosterone levels in the high-fat group, regardless of total caloric intake. The dietary fat rehabilitation that the 2026 framework supports, the return of whole eggs, red meat, full-fat dairy, and butter to the table has a direct hormonal consequence for men that has been almost entirely absent from public health messaging. Vitamin D's role in this picture deserves mention because its deficiency is nearly universal in older adults, and it functions essentially as a steroid hormone precursor in the same biochemical family as testosterone. Vitamin D receptors are expressed in Leydig cells, and vitamin D directly upregulates the expression of testosterone synthesizing enzymes. Men with vitamin D deficiency have consistently lower testosterone levels than men with adequate vitamin D, and supplementation studies show modest but consistent testosterone increases when vitamin D deficiency is corrected. The dietary sources of vitamin D with meaningful content are fatty fish, egg yolks, and liver. All foods that the 2026 guidelines support, and the previous guidelines had either discouraged or treated with ambivalence. The sleep connection closes a critical loop in this discussion. Testosterone secretion follows a circadian rhythm, with peak production occurring during slow-wave and REM sleep in the early morning hours. This peak production timing is directly connected to the occurrence of nocturnal penile tumescence, which happens during the same REM sleep phases that drive peak testosterone release. Sleep deprivation, or fragmented sleep, suppresses this peak testosterone pulse and reduces morning erections independently of any nutritional factor. The minerals discussed in this video also support sleep quality. Magnesium has well-documented sleep-promoting effects through its role in GABA receptor modulation and parasympathetic nervous system activation. The dietary correction that restores zinc and magnesium therefore improves hormonal health through two pathways simultaneously: direct effects on testosterone production and SHBG, and indirect effects through improved sleep architecture that restores the nocturnal testosterone pulse. The practical protocol is straightforward. Include oysters when accessible, even canned, as the single most efficient zinc source available. Add red meat 2 to 3 times per week. Include pumpkin seeds daily for both zinc and magnesium. Add almonds and dark leafy greens for magnesium. Include eggs daily for vitamin D, cholesterol substrate, and zinc. Eliminate seed oils and replace with butter and olive oil to restore the saturated fat substrate for steroid hormone synthesis. This is not a complex protocol. It is a return to the dietary pattern that supported male hormonal health for generations before processed food displaced it. The morning signal, when it returns, is not merely a welcome personal indicator. It is the body confirming that the vascular, hormonal, and neurological systems required to produce it are being adequately nourished. For men over 60, that confirmation matters far beyond the bedroom. It means the arteries are maintaining elasticity. It means free testosterone is reaching tissues. It means the nervous system is functioning during sleep. These are the same systems that determine cardiovascular risk, muscle maintenance, cognitive clarity, and physical independence in the decades ahead. The exercise variable is worth addressing because it is frequently offered as the primary explanation for declining morning erections in older men, with the recommendation to exercise more. Exercise does improve testosterone modestly, primarily through its effects on insulin sensitivity and body fat reduction, both of which reduce aromatase activity and lower estrogen levels. But exercise cannot compensate for zinc or magnesium deficiency. The enzymatic machinery that makes testosterone requires the mineral cofactors whether or not exercise is occurring. A man who exercises regularly but eats a diet low in zinc and magnesium will continue to have suboptimal testosterone production regardless of his training frequency. The nutritional foundation comes first. Exercise then builds on that foundation, but it cannot replace it. The alcohol question is relevant here because alcohol directly suppresses testosterone through multiple mechanisms. It reduces zinc absorption in the gut, it increases zinc excretion through the kidneys, it elevates cortisol, which directly inhibits testosterone production, it impairs Leydig cell function directly, and it increases aromatase activity, converting more of the limited available testosterone into estrogen. Even moderate regular alcohol consumption, 2 to 3 drinks per evening, produces a measurable depression of free testosterone that accumulates over time. Men over 60 who report that morning erections disappeared gradually over several years without any acute health event, and who also drink alcohol regularly should consider the cumulative hormonal impact of that habit as a primary contributing factor before attributing the change to aging alone. The body composition dimension links directly to the hormonal picture. Abdominal adipose tissue, visceral fat, expresses high concentrations of aromatase, the enzyme that converts testosterone to estradiol. A man with significant abdominal fat is running an internal testosterone to estrogen conversion factory that continuously depletes his free testosterone supply. The zinc and magnesium protocol supports testosterone production and bioavailability through direct biochemical mechanisms, but it works against a persistent headwind in men with substantial visceral fat. Dietary changes that reduce visceral fat, primarily through the reduction of refined carbohydrates, fructose, and ultra-processed foods, are therefore synergistic with the mineral protocol rather than separate from it. The 2026 guidelines' collective emphasis on whole animal foods, minimal processing, and reduced added sugars addresses all of these factors simultaneously within a single dietary framework. The age at which this intervention has the greatest impact is worth specifying. Men in their early to mid-60s who are experiencing the beginning of morning erection frequency decline and have not yet progressed to complete absence have the most to gain from early nutritional correction. The vascular and hormonal systems retain significant repair capacity at this stage. Men in their mid to late 70s who have had complete absence for several years may achieve partial improvement through nutritional intervention, but should also pursue a complete medical evaluation to rule out other contributing factors, including vascular disease, peripheral neuropathy, and medication effects. Common medications associated with reduced nocturnal penile tumescence include beta blockers, thiazide diuretics, SSRIs, antipsychotics, and finasteride. Any man on these medications should discuss the sexual and hormonal side effects with his prescribing physician because alternatives frequently exist. The prostate health dimension also intersects here. Zinc is the most concentrated in the prostate gland of any tissue in the body, and the prostate depends on zinc for normal cellular function and immune defense. Zinc deficiency is associated with increased prostate inflammation and has been investigated as a risk factor for prostate pathology. The same dietary pattern that restores zinc adequacy for testosterone production and vascular function simultaneously supports prostate health, which makes the oyster and red meat recommendation relevant to multiple male health concerns simultaneously. This is the kind of multi-system benefit that whole food dietary correction provides, and that single nutrient supplementation approaches rarely replicate. The dopamine connection adds another dimension that is rarely included in nutritional discussions of male vitality. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter central to motivation, drive, and reward, is required for the normal functioning of the hypothalamic circuits that regulate testosterone release. Dopamine tone in the hypothalamus stimulates GnRH release, which initiates the hormonal cascade leading to testosterone production. Dopamine itself is synthesized from the amino acid tyrosine in a pathway that requires iron, vitamin B6, and vitamin C as cofactors. The dietary sources of tyrosine, B6, and iron with the highest combined density are red meat, liver, and eggs, the same foods that provide zinc for testosterone synthesis and cholesterol for steroid hormone production. The convergence of multiple hormone-supporting nutrients in the same food category is not coincidental. It reflects an evolutionary dietary history in which these foods were the primary nutritional substrate for male physiological function. The final mechanism worth covering is the nitric oxide pathway in more detail because it represents a practical dietary lever beyond zinc. Dietary nitrates, found in concentrated form in leafy greens including arugula, spinach, and beet greens, are converted by oral bacteria to nitrites and then to nitric oxide in the body. This dietary nitrate pathway provides a meaningful supplementary source of nitric oxide for endothelial function, independent of the zinc nitric oxide synthase pathway. Men who include a daily portion of arugula or spinach alongside their zinc-containing animal foods are supporting nitric oxide availability from two separate biochemical routes simultaneously. Beet juice has been studied specifically for its nitrate content and its effects on exercise performance and vascular function. But the whole vegetable, consumed as part of a meal, provides the same nitrate alongside fiber, folate, and iron that the juice version lacks. The 2026 Guidelines recommendation for daily dark leafy greens supports vascular function through this mechanism among several others. The conversation that most men need to have with themselves, and occasionally with their physicians, is not an embarrassing admission. It is a straightforward health assessment. Morning erections are a biomarker. Their presence indicates that the vascular, hormonal, and neurological systems are working. Their absence is a signal worth investigating nutritionally before attributing it entirely to age and accepting the decline as inevitable. The nutrients required to support these systems are available in ordinary food, in amounts that can be achieved by anyone who understands which foods to prioritize. Oysters, red meat, pumpkin seeds, almonds, eggs, leafy greens, butter, and whole fish. That is the list. It is not exotic. It is not expensive compared to the cost of diminishing vitality accepted as inevitable. It is a return to the dietary pattern that male physiology was built to run on. The testosterone muscle-bone triangle is one of the most consequential long-term consequences of the hormonal decline that zinc and magnesium deficiency accelerates. Testosterone is the primary anabolic signal for muscle protein synthesis in male physiology. When free testosterone falls, the rate of muscle protein synthesis declines below the rate of muscle protein breakdown, and net muscle mass decreases. This process, sarcopenia, is often attributed entirely to aging and inadequate protein intake, but the hormonal dimension is frequently underweighted. A man who is eating adequate protein but has low free testosterone is fighting the hormonal headwind against muscle maintenance at every meal. The protein he consumes stimulates muscle protein synthesis through the mTOR pathway, but the androgenic signal that amplifies that synthesis is weak. Correcting zinc and magnesium status to restore free testosterone does not merely improve morning vitality. It improves the efficiency of every gram of dietary protein consumed, making resistance training and protein intake substantially more effective. Bone mineral density follows the same logic. Testosterone stimulates osteoblast activity, the bone-building side of the bone remodeling cycle. When testosterone declines, osteoclast activity, bone resorption, progressively outpaces bone formation, and bone density decreases. Osteoporosis in men is significantly underdiagnosed and undertreated relative to its prevalence in women, but its consequences are equally severe. Hip fractures in men over 70 carry a higher one-year mortality rate than the same fracture in women. The nutritional support for male testosterone production through zinc and magnesium is therefore also a bone preservation strategy, again operating through the same dietary sources as every other benefit discussed in this video. The simplest summary of everything in this video is this: the foods that modern dietary guidelines spent 40 years discouraging, red meat, oysters, eggs, full-fat dairy, and organ meats, are precisely the foods that male hormonal health most depends on. The 2026 dietary guidelines have begun correcting this error. The practical correction, for any man who acts on it consistently over 3 to 6 months, will be measurable in his morning experience, his energy, his muscle response to exercise, and likely his cardiovascular numbers. These are not small benefits. They are the physical foundation of an independent and vigorous life in the decades most men incorrectly believe are simply declining. The zinc-to-copper ratio is a detail that matters practically and is frequently overlooked when zinc intake is increased. Zinc and copper compete for absorption in the intestine through shared transporter proteins. When zinc intake rises substantially, copper absorption decreases, and copper deficiency can develop over months of high-dose zinc supplementation. Dietary zinc from food sources, at the amounts achievable through the protocol described in this video, does not present this risk because the zinc dose from food is self-limiting. However, men who choose to add zinc supplements in addition to dietary correction should be aware that doses above 40 milligrams per day of supplemental zinc, sustained over months, can deplete copper. Including copper-rich foods, particularly liver and shellfish, alongside higher zinc intake, maintains the correct balance. Fortunately, liver and shellfish are already in the protocol for their zinc and vitamin D content, so the copper is automatically included when the dietary approach is followed as described. The timeline expectation for men following this protocol is important to communicate honestly. Free testosterone changes require time to manifest as changes in subjective experience. Blood levels of zinc and magnesium can normalize within 4 to 6 weeks of consistent dietary correction. Free testosterone increases lag behind mineral normalization by additional weeks as the hormonal axis recalibrates. Morning erection frequency, which depends on free testosterone reaching tissue threshold, further lags behind the blood level changes. Most men who follow this protocol consistently report beginning to notice changes between 8 and 12 weeks. Full benefit in terms of frequency and consistency typically requires 4 to 6 months of sustained dietary change. This timeline does not represent a failure of the intervention. It represents the actual biological speed of hormonal recalibration in a system that has been nutritionally depleted over years. Expecting week 2 results from a 12-week process leads to premature abandonment of an intervention that would have worked with patients. Thank you for watching until the end. A like and a comment help this channel reach more people who need this information. If you'd like to support this work directly, the Buy Me a Coffee link is in the description. See you next time.